We are live. Welcome to episode 1 of Reclaiming Leadership with the Good Business Witch. I am so excited to be coming to you live. This is a new way of recording a podcast for me, and I just think it's awesome. I'm super excited about it. So happy Monday. And this week we are talking about burnout. We're talking about kind of the challenges of it and kind of the first ways you can start breaking up with it. And before we dive in, I just want to tell you real quick about my program that is coming up called Break Up with Burnout. It's a 7-month program and it's going to be awesome. I'll tell you more about it afterwards. For now, let's jump in and talk a little bit about where this idea of burnout came from. It actually started in the 1970s when American psychologist Herbert Freudenberger, that's quite the name, right? used the term burnout to describe what was happening in stressful situations to people in helping professions. So these helpers are really the doctors and nurses around us, right? So he noticed that in these caregiving positions, professionals would end up feeling really exhausted and unable to cope with the high stress of their jobs. We obviously saw this firsthand during the pandemic, right? Provider and doctor and nurse burnout was at an all-time high, but it's something that people were tuning into in the 1970s already, Freudenberger in particular. And it makes total sense. However, like what burnout really is a little bit like what the definition of is. If I don't age myself too much with that reference. There's a lot of different ideas around it, around how to diagnose it, how common it actually is, those sorts of things. But there's not like a set rule of what burnout is. So they're a little more like guidelines than rules, and we're going to investigate some of those today. What experts can agree on is that there are 3 common symptoms to burnout, and those are exhaustion, alienation from activities, especially at work, and reduced work performance. So you'll notice that all 3 of these things have to do with work. And this is where I think the burnout research needs to catch up. And I think it is catching up because there's people like myself having these conversations about burnout and it existing outside of just our work environment. Now, with these 3 symptoms, we do get a pretty good idea of what burnout is. And I think that they can be actually applied to non-work situations as well. So there's a lot of value in using them. Plus, it's a nice baseline, right, to get us started. So obviously, I feel like everybody knows what exhaustion is, right? We have all experienced exhaustion. Exhausted is when we're feeling both mentally and physically, or either mentally or physically, just worn out. And if you have chronic exhaustion, you can also experience things like headaches or stomach problems, cycle irregularities if you're a person who has a period, sleeplessness, all of these things. It's so odd that, yeah, we can actually get to that point of exhaustion where we can't sleep anymore. I myself have actually been too tired to sleep before, which is a little nuts, if you ask me. It is what it is, right? The second warning sign of burnout is alienation. And so, really, when we think about what that word alienation means or what an alien is it's someone outside. So, we talk about space aliens, right? So, really feeling like you're outside of your work situation. And this is when we see cynicism pop up. This is where we see dissatisfaction with working conditions, pay, all of these things that maybe weren't such a big deal before. There's also this emotional distance and detachment in our work. Now, I would argue that alienation also happens in our personal life as well. A lot of times when we're in that burnout point or we're headed that way, we withdraw, right? We don't have time for anybody else in the world. We barely have time for ourselves. So we experience this alienation in all parts of our lives. And then finally, there's the reduced performance symptom of burnout. This is where we become pretty apathetic about our work. We let tasks slip. We're less productive. We're less effective. Um, and again, this can happen in our day-to-day lives too, right? The chores pile up. You don't go get the oil changed on the car. You're not doing your laundry. It's hard to kind of keep focused on kind of what's going on in your life with the kids' lives, all that. And when we're looking at burnout, we're really looking at this inability to recover. So if you've ever had a period of high stress in your life where you just felt like you could not recover, like a good night's sleep or several good nights' sleep, even a vacation or like a long weekend was not fixing it for you. You just couldn't disconnect. It's a sign that you were experiencing burnout. Now, there is, of course, chronic stress, right? So this is like that continual state of stress. It persists over a long time. It can be very overwhelming and have its own physical and mental components as well. And where that line between like how stressed out you are and whether or not it's moved over into burnout is going to be different for everybody. So that's one of the reasons why experts have a hard time agreeing on what burnout is, who it is affecting, and how it's affecting them, right? Um, we do have some interesting predictors of burnout, though. So I find this super interesting. And I know we're getting a little bit into the nitty gritty, but this sets us up for future episodes. So just bear with me for just a moment more. These are going to be really interesting and actually going to help prove my point that burnout happens at work, but outside of our work as well. So predictors of burnout include our sex, include our age, include work tasks that we deem unreasonable. So just like those wacky requests from your boss, right? Your weekly working hours, the autonomy that you have in your job, the support in your work life, the support in your personal life, the sentimental accomplishments that you experience, like the accomplishments that may not result in a raise, but like they make you feel good, whether or not you have those. Leisure activities outside of your work, your social support systems, your family, and your non-work work conflict. So your work life and personal life, the conflict between those two, if you're not supported in one, you may feel burnt out in the other. It's really interesting that like there's this odd balance that really needs to be maintained to keep us in that sweet spot of, dealing with stress, because stress is normal and natural, but also, not being overwhelmed by it. Really, the difference between burnout and even chronic stress, not to mention regular stress, isn't so much where we're experiencing it. It's about whether or not recovery is possible. Kind of crazy, right? Now, the patriarchy is a big cause of burnout, if not the biggest cause of burnout. And this is one of the many, many reasons I am all about smashing the patriarchy. So if you need to hop off the recording now because you just can't deal with it, that is fine. But before you do, I want to share this statistic with you. During the pandemic, when it started in 2020, our lives changed, right? Do you know during the pandemic, 3.5 million women either cut back on their work hours or left their paying jobs because they couldn't maintain the balance between their paying work and their unpaid labor? Because women are still completing nearly twice as much unpaid labor as men. That means if you've got a family of four, so a husband, a wife, and two kids, she's doing twice the unpaid labor at home on average than he is, but they share those two kids and the house and the pets and all the things. So tell me that the patriarchy doesn't have an impact on burnout. It absolutely does. Here's a stat that will completely blow your mind. I found this today and I'm like, oh my God, you're kidding me. So, one of the big challenges that we have here in the United States, of course, is a lack of quality, affordable childcare. Did you know that the experts agree that 17% more women would be working and would be in the labor force if they had access to good quality, affordable childcare? Not only that, but 31% of women without a college degree would be in the workforce. Now, hang on a second. This is going to make your head spin because it made mine spin a little bit. So, when women have access to good, affordable health care, not healthcare, that's another argument altogether, right? When they have access to good, affordable child care, they make close to $100,000 more over their lifetime. They also have an additional 30,000 in their retirement fund. Yeah. But why don't we have better childcare in the US? Because the patriarchy tells us that women are supposed to be at home taking care of those kids. And if they choose to have a job outside of the house, then, they'll just have to balance it all. It's all about that work-life balance. Men are not asked about a work-life balance. It's like being on the red carpet. I love the video of it's Tony Stark, so it's Robert Downey Jr. and Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, sitting next to each other at a convention. And they're both asked a question. And his is all about like, what kind of training were you going through and how does it feel to be this example to people, yada yada. It was meaningful. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was this really meaningful question. And then they literally looked at her because it was like, oh, we have a question for you and you. So let's ask this question and let's ask the second question before they gave anybody a chance to answer. And they asked Scarlett Johansson, oh, you're in really great shape. Is there any special diet that you're on? And she's like, wait, why do you get the fun, interesting question and I get the one about salads? It's a patriarchy. Women are supposed to be a certain way. And that certain way does not include being a big moral impact on people like maybe Tony Stark's Iron Man. It also doesn't include being a power player because as we have seen, women move into more quote unquote masculine fields, kind of more away from the caregiver, the teaching jobs, that sort of thing that we are attracted to. It doesn't let up. It does not matter. We're still doing more work. So, of course, we are burning out. So, as we work to break up with burnout, one of the first things that we have to do is reassess how we're doing things in life and how much effort and energy we're putting into everything, and whether or not we need to be putting that much effort into it, or if somebody else can come in and help us. I am so, so blessed to have a partner who loves cooking and he'll get in and do dishes and he does his laundry and I do my laundry and all of that. And he doesn't expect me to be his caregiver and housekeeper and all that. And I realize that that is a beautiful privilege that I have in my relationship. And I'm so, so blessed to have that. But if you don't have something like that, it's like where can you start delegating, for lack of a better word? How can you lean on the people at work or hire someone else in your business to help you manage tasks so that you're not doing it for 12 and 13 hours a day? So, your challenge this week is to look at where you're putting your time and your energy. And if those tasks uplift you, enlighten you, make you feel great, satisfy some positive emotional urge or need. And if they don't, document that, write those down, look into what is going on there a little bit. And you might find that you can hire somebody to come to your house every couple of weeks to clean your house. I certainly have. I pay my kiddo to vacuum once a week. Little things like that. Or it might be something bigger where you need to really start looking at a new job if that's where your heart is pulling you. So look at ways that you can change how you're interacting in this world and ask yourself this question: does it support you or is it keeping you down? Thank you so much for tuning in to this inaugural episode of Reclaiming Leadership with the Good Business Witch. In upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking about empowered leadership. We're going to be talking about female archetypes, some of the words that are used to keep us down and in safe little boxes. Safe for whom? Am I right? Not safe for us. And just anything else that kind of strikes my fancy, things that are popping up in the news and all that. If we're still talking about quiet quitting next week, then I will probably be talking about that here. And if you need anything from me, please reach out. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. And as always, stay magical.